We're doing this early on. Last year, Ms. Morrison and I kind of did it backwards, and we did our meeting in March. And so we had tons of things to cover by March, you know. And so this time we're kind of starting with foundation, and Ms. H and I were talking that we'll probably do another one as we start getting further and further into it. By the end of the year, they will know 8 parts of speech. We're only at 2 to 3 right now. So you can imagine the labeling and the classifying of sentences is going to get more and more and more in depth. And then the more that we go, then it'll be helpful to like reassess and get together again so that we can make sure that we're teaching the kids the same thing at school and at home. Okay, so again, that's what Shurley provides. You guys can look at that. And this is what I would refer to as my cheat sheet. Okay, so this is what we've covered so far. And up at the top is a Shurley Jingles. This is a YouTube playlist that I put together that's kind of what I go off of in class. They'll go through it. The kids love it. I'm sure you guys have heard the kids sing it at home already. Whether you recognize the songs or not, I don't know. But they love them and they really enjoy it. And I think I have it all the way. The playlist is already all the way through what we're going to cover. So they can start getting familiar with those as well. Then we've gone through our 5 parts of speech, our nouns, and then our verbs, and then we're going to be getting into adverbs and adjectives next. So I went ahead and included that on there so that you guys just could have an idea, and once we get to it, then you already know what I'm talking about, or what we're talking about in class. Okay? So this is your little cheat sheet. Okay? And then just for your reference, when we talk about reassessing in March or around that time, this is kind of sort of what we got into around the March time last year. We're gonna, and you don't have this because I didn't want to overload you with even more so papers, but we get into 4 different kinds of nouns. We get into pronouns, which they'll learn all of those, and they'll be able to identify and classify them on sentence. They will get into prepositions, and they will get into, like I said, 7 parts of speech. So it does get in depth, and it will require us to continue to work together. That way, you know, when we get home, if you guys don't know what we're doing at school, you're going to try to help them the best that you can. But it throws off the question and answer flow, and it throws off the fluency that we have here. And then, you know, you'll go home and, no, but my teacher said this, and you'll be like, but, you know, and they don't know that, you know, you guys might not know the question and answer flow. The reason that we stress the question and answer flow, which we'll get in a minute, is right now, you'll see that it's pretty repetitive as far as where nouns are, where verbs are in a sentence. As we move on, they're not going to necessarily be in that specific order. So if they don't answer the questions that we ask, then they're going to assume that the noun's always at the beginning, the verb automatically follows. And so when we follow that question and answer flow, then they have to look for what answers that question. So those questions are very important that we drill into them right now. And so that's why I think it's a great thing that we're doing it starting off early with this group. Okay, so we'll get, and then later on, this also goes with our sentences in our writing. We're not going to focus on the kiddos learning to write paragraphs. Ms. Morrison and I last year, they're going to learn that in 2nd grade. Right now it's important for them to be able to create a good sentence. They can't create paragraphs if they don't know how to write a good sentence with all of these parts in it. So we're concentrating more so this year on making sure that they can write these sentences, edit them, know the right parts of it, and then they can work more so on the paragraph. We are having them write paragraphs. They do free write, but we're not stressing paragraphs right now. We're stressing making sure that they can write a complete sentence that makes sense, that does have a complete thought in it. So again, this is just a preview of what is to come, and that way you guys know that this is just the foundation. Okay? So on this one, I wanted to give you guys kind of what the kids see on a daily basis. Okay? This is from their book. You know, we cannot send their books home because they are this big. And so, you know, by the time they get home, by the time they come back, you know, it's just not going to work. So I do tend that every time that we introduce a new jingle or a new part of our question and answer flow, I tend to send how we integrated that home, like a copy of what the kids saw. So for example, this was our first jingle, and we're going to go through the jingles, and you guys are going to love them and dance with them just like the kids do. And but this was our sentence jingle. So when you access that YouTube address that I sent you, you will see this playlist right here. And so I have it all the way from, like I said, the sentence jingle all the way to the 8 parts of speech, which we will get to by the end of the semester. So this one right here is our sentence jingle, and I'll just play it really briefly. It's only a minute long.
Our sentence is complete. With 5 simple rules, it beats. It has a subject, and a verb, and it makes sense with every word. Add a capital letter and a punctuation mark, and now our sentence has all these marks. But remember, subject and verb and complete sense with a capital letter and an end mark too. Our sentence is complete, and now we'll do.
Okay, so that was our sentence jingle. And how many of you guys have heard it at home by now? Yes? One? No? Okay. They love it. They will like get up and dance around to it. If you see our little, so like I said, we've done the parts of speech. So this is the song, the jingle that we based it off. So on my little hand drawing on my anchor chart up there, that is something that this is their Bible for English right now. Like this hand is their Bible. So you will see them when I tell them to go sit down and write a sentence, I tell them make sure, and all I have to say is subject, and they will start subject and verb and complete sense with a capital letter and an end mark too. But that's how they know to check off on a sentence that they have a complete sentence. And so I was telling Miss H that I love that we're starting it right now because this goes hand in hand with Abeka's writing curriculum right now. And Abeka, we're writing sentences and paragraphs as well. So when they're writing, they're always singing this subject and verb. You know, and like I said, all you have to say is subject and they'll go off. And so it's important that if they're writing at home, just, like I said, play it for yourself. You'll end up having it in your head as well. And sing it to them and make sure that they have that within their sentence. Okay, so that was just an introduction of how they're working on sentences. And so, again, that's right. The next page is your sentence, your hand. You got it. You've heard it. And so they'll know how to write their sentences and check and make sure that they have that. And then, so the next thing that we've learned so far is our noun. So the thing that they love, and again, these jingles are very catchy to them. And so the noun jingle is this one. And
Jingle, my friend. You can shake it to the left and shake it to the right. Find yourself a noun and then recite. A noun is a person.
And so right there, if you stop right there, the minute you say a noun names a person, they will chant the rest back to you. Because that's just, they're already getting it in their brain and they already have it. So they can automatically let you know that's the person, place, or idea. Okay, thing or idea. And so, again, if you just play that at home, they like it. It's not much of a chore for them to do that at this point because it's really fun for them. The next part is the verb jingle. And like I said, and I wanted to print that out because they really learn based on these lyrics. They really do. And so the verb jingle right now is their favorite, I think. And you can see why.
There is no doubt. It tells what the subject does like sing and shout. So wiggle, jiggle, turn around, raise your arms and stop the crowd. Shake your finger and wink your eye. Put your hands back to your side. Wiggle, jiggle, turn.
So they do all that stuff, and they know by the song that those are action words. And like I said, we've talked about how it shows actions. It tells us what the subject does. So we've learned the subject of the sentence, and now we've learned that the verb, it shows us what the subject does. Okay? And like I said, they love that one. So then this is where we start classifying on the next page. Classifying sentences. And If you look at it, we have a sentence, and the sentence is in the middle of the page. It says, what does it say? Boys walked. Very simple, 2 words, but it's a sentence. It has a subject and it has a verb. And I always ask the kids, does that make sense? And they'll say yes or no. Because I tell them, if I tell you desk ceiling, they're like, does that make sense? No, it doesn't. Okay, if I tell you that the desk is underneath the ceiling with the light, then they'll know that it has a meaning, that it makes sense. Okay, so we're teaching them already to make sure that their sentences make sense. Not just because it has a subject, it's going to have a verb, and that doesn't mean it makes sense. So we have to make sure that it has those 5 components that we've been talking about. Okay, so our question and answer flow starts off with, we read the sentence all aloud, and so we say, boys walked, and they'll echo that, boys walked. And then you'll say, who walked? And so at that point they'll know, well, boys walked. And they'll automatically say, and you want them to recite to you, boys, subject, noun. Because as they go on, they need to get those labels in their minds. So you say, who walked? Boys, subject, noun. Okay? And then the second part is, what is being said about boys? Boys walked, verb, and they'll label with a V. Okay? So that is right now, that is the introduction to that. Okay? So on the third part, on the next, on page 33 of that packet, it says that the question and answer flow uses questions and answers to name the parts of a sentence. So to classify a subject noun, you ask who or what, depending on if it's a person or a thing. Okay? And it's pretty simple, right? Then to classify a verb, you ask the question, what is being said about that subject in that sentence. Okay? Does anybody have any questions on that? No? So typically, I went ahead and included the question and answer flow for what's coming. I'm not going to go into adverbs or adjectives because we have not covered it yet. But I can go ahead, we can do an example just so that you know how it goes as we add more parts to it. Okay? So if you see the sentence at the bottom of page 71, it says, boys walk slowly. So you would say, if you would repeat it with me like the kids do, so repeat the sentence, boys walk slowly. Your turn. Walk slowly. Thank you. Okay, who walks slowly?
Boys.
Subject, noun. And then they would label that. What is being said about boys? Boys walked. And so you would write verb. But you want them to say the part of speech that they're labeling. So make sure that they say, boys walked, verb. Okay, and then once we add adverbs, it'll say, walked how? And then they would say, slowly, adverb. And they would have already learned the ADV, which would be adverb, so that they can label on top of it, and so forth. So every part of speech that we add, we'll add that way. We'll continue with, we'll always ask for the subject, we'll always ask for the verb, and then we'll continue from then. Okay? And like I said, there's some introductory sentences once we get to adverbs that I wanted you to have. That way you know how you're going to do the question and answer flow at home when the time arises. So now I want you to look at the next packet that I gave you, and this is our classroom practice. And I'm going to put that because this is where it differs just a tad to what we do on the board. So I'm going to pull that up so that you can see that. Okay. But before that, I'm right here in this corner just because boys ran with such a small sentence. So normally, we have the sentence on the board. Okay? The student will come up and they'll read the sentence. The class will echo the sentence. They'll ask the question, who ran? And then the students will say, boys, subject, noun. And they will label that way. Okay? And then they'll say, what is being said about boys? And they'll say, boys ran, verb. All of your students right now are doing that. They do it, they come to the board, they do it, and I don't think there's any confusion about it, okay? So we've done that repeatedly. They know how to find their subject noun, they know how to find their verb. But this is how the worksheet looks. So you can see how that changes a little bit in the way that they see it on the board. It's smaller, there's more words. So this is where we need to train them to make sure that they're reading their directions. I still read it to them, we go through it as a class, but come test day, I'm not going to read it all because I'm pretty much providing the question and answer flow. They need to train their brain to ask these questions so that they can find that subject and they can find that noun, okay? So we've done this, I think, Ms. Asia, I don't know how many times your class has done it, but we've done several of these worksheets already. And so I've attached them to this so that you can have them at home as well. And so pretty much this one is still working on training them on their question and answer flow, that they're learning it. So we have the same sentence, who ran, you'll fill in the blank. And the important part here is that they don't continue to write the whole sentence. They'll tend to want to always repeat the whole sentence back to you. Okay, so you want them to specify what is the subject. Okay, so at this point, boys ran. Who ran? Boys. And then we're teaching them the label for subject noun, which is SN. Okay? Then what is being said about boys, then they do say both parts back to you. Boys ran, they say the word verb, and then label with a V. Okay? That is Shurley's way of teaching the kids the question and answer flow. But this is what's important, how we classify. Eventually this part will go away and it'll only be the sentence. So they'll need to say who ran, what is being said, and all the other questions that are going to come with every part of speech that's going to come. And if they don't know it, or if we're saying, well, what is it talking about? Because sometimes at home we'll be like, because we don't know that question and answer flow, well, what is the sentence about? And of course they can figure it out. But like we said, as it progresses and there's more parts of speech added, and they're not in order, subject nouns are not always first, verbs are not always right after it, then we're gonna run into a place where they don't know what to do anymore, or how to find that part of speech. Okay? So if we look at there, if we did that, it's the same thing that I just did on the board. We worked on a builder sentence, on how to build a sentence. So they have a word bank where they have their subject, nouns, and where they have their verb. So at this point, they pick a subject noun, they pick a verb, and then they go to their hand, right? What is our hand? Do we know our little chant yet? Subject and verb and complete sense with a capital letter and an mark too. I say this all day long. So they pick their subject noun, they pick their verb, but now they have to make sure that they put their capital letter and their end mark. And, Abeka teaches right now periods, which I'm glad that they do end mark because it already teaches them that there's other ways of ending a sentence. There's other ways like question marks and exclamation points, and so I feel like they get ahead of the game if we already train them that even though periods are the most common, there are other options. So for this, they will usually write a sentence on their back of their test or on the back of their worksheet if there's not like a space provided like the builder sentence. Okay? So if you turn the page, you'll see that this is the builder sentence that I'm talking about on the back. Okay? And so pretty much it's a little repetitive for them. I try to kind of not focus on this part, but they pick a subject noun, a verb, and then down here they just have to copy it with the right beginning and the ending, which is a capital letter and an end mark. Okay? Any questions up to there? Pretty good? Everybody good? Okay. So chapter 1, checkup 3, this is going home today. This is what the kids are doing today to prepare for their test tomorrow. Well, like I said, it's pretty repetitive of what we just did on classroom practice 1 because that's exactly what they're going to do on their test, except they have to do it on their own. So it's important for you to go over what goes next and what are the questions so that they don't just look at this paper and say, what do I do now? Okay. If you go on to the next classroom practice 4, then you can see how it's going to start to look when they add your adverb. Okay, and so all they're doing on this first one is adding the question. Okay. So they added swam where, and so that's gonna describe it's gonna describe your verb. It's gonna it says if you listen to the jingle, it says it modifies the verb, so it describes a verb. And so again, all these jingles that we're gonna go into, and even the introduction question and answer flow, I will send home. That way you know, okay, this is a question that we're adding to this, but it's important for now for us to know that this is how our question and answer flow needs to stay. It's consistency for them. And so they'll be able to find the subject and noun and the verb no matter how long the sentence is, no matter how many parts of speech they're looking for. Okay? And so like I said, I included these through us adding adjectives, which, like I said, will be about another week or two. So you have, so it goes about a part of speech, a week right now, and then we'll kind of, when it comes to prepositions and all that, it does get a little bit more sticky, so we spend more time on those. But like I said, continuously we'll send these home so that you guys are aware of what this question and answer flow is for that particular one. We're just adding on. But again, since we didn't do this till later on last year, then there was a lot for us to cover. Right now, this is your foundation, and if you guys are good with that, then I think, if you guys have no questions, then I think you're good to prepare the kids for the test tomorrow. You guys have any questions?
Don't be scared.